both, but I was, like today, a little bit delayed, and I was 2 hours delayed on my flight.
Oh, no.
So I had to get ready in the airport bathroom. I had like 3 minutes to change and to get there. Seriously,
gosh.
I think if people knew the behind scenes, which
Right.
I think you guys are uncovering today, don't judge me. It's not as smooth as you see in pictures. So-
Why did you pick out the smallest water bottles in the world?
Well, it's what we had. It's not the little shorties. It's what we had. And they were cold.
They're cute.
I know.
You know us.
Well, yeah. Are you sponsored now by a water brand and we didn't know about it?
No, I just thought the label was ugly, so I took it off.
Oh my gosh. Thanks for getting the tiniest waters in the world.
They make me feel like Shaq a little bit.
That's been like the theme of some of the drinks you've had. You had a little teeny Coke can the other day. What's your go-to drink, Payton?
Dr. Pepper.
Okay.
I respect
Just
it.
like plain Dr. Pepper, or you got to go a flavor like the vanilla?
Just plain. I want to try the coconut one, though.
Yeah.
I don't know how to
Just
say
hit
it.
every sound pad. It's fine.
The
No.
chords hit it. I'm sorry.
The coconut one, because it's released, but it's not out here yet.
Yeah.
I haven't seen it anywhere. But my parents had it, and they said it was pretty good. They said it doesn't taste like sunscreen,
That's good.
which I'm assuming they mean it doesn't taste like sunscreen smells. I would hope, Mom and Dad, that you don't eat sunscreen.
I cannot believe that people think soda tastes like sunscreen sometimes.
Well, specifically coconut. Like fake coconut stuff smells like.
I mean, I get that.
What's
I
the
get that.
banana boat? Is that the sunscreen? Right?
Yes.
Right.
Yeah. I was like, I do not know my sunscreen brands.
Yeah.
It's probably a bad thing.
I don't either.
I had to start wearing chapstick with SPF out here once I moved out here though, because I would get sunburn on my lips. That is the worst thing that
Do you have to do
It
that?
Maybe it's
happens
ever
all the
happened to me.
time to me. It burns so bad.
It's the worst. It's like a chap. I mean, has it happened to you?
No.
No, it's like getting chapped lips.
That's sunburned lips.
Yeah, but it's always on fire.
Yeah. And then they turn like bright red too.
Speaking of always on fire, welcome back, everyone. We're so glad you are here and tuning back into the Rocky Student Podcast, where we want to inspire purpose and joy in you by highlighting people who have an amazing platform that are using it for his purpose. And we are joined today by our student guest host by none other than Payton. So, Payton, thanks for jumping in today.
What's
Of
up,
course.
Peyton?
Thanks for having me.
First week of summer,
Yes.
and you decided to come back and hang with us.
Always.
Do you have something that you're really looking forward to this summer?
I'm going to see Zach Bryan.
Ooh, at Mile High.
Uh-huh.
That's gonna be sick.
Let's go. Are you going to be there?
No,
Really
I
knew a
don't-
lot
I
about
don't-
where it was. And
well, yeah.
you're a big country guy.
No.
Parker's gonna be the
No,
guy
I just-
who like produces country music with rap beats.
Mm.
I
I'd
hate
listen.
that kind of music. Are you talking
It's
about
kind of like Bill Murray,
Bill
except
Murray's not? No,
just not rap beats.
No.
Anyways, we're glad you're here.
Thank you.
It's gonna be fun.
Yeah.
You actually have some great questions. I'm excited to hear about.
Yeah.
With that, I'm gonna intro today's guest. All right, today's guest I had the honor of going to college with, and since seeing her impact the world, she started a nonprofit, The Calling, at 18 years old. She was the youngest female to host an event at Red Rocks. She's a global speaker, international author, radio host, and Miss International World Miss Monaco. And here's what ChatGPT says. Chrysandra has more titles than the Star Wars franchise. And while many of us were figuring out how to do laundry, she was starting a nonprofit. She also is an avid runner, a professional mermaid. And so ChatGPT's beat me up. While I struggled to run a mile, she's out there inspiring the world, both on land, under the sea. Get ready to dive into an enchanting conversation with someone who proves that magic is real and that you can do anything you set your mind to. Can you guys welcome Chrysandra Brunson to the show?
Hey-o.
Come on in.
You can't hear it, but in here there's a crowd cheering.
Everyone's
you on.
cheering for you. Everyone's cheering for you.
I think that was the best intro I've ever had.
Hey, listen.
We know how to do some Chat GPT up in here.
I
We
didn't
love
know that
ChatGPT.
ChatGPT could do that, like intros.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'll just sometimes be. And this one I literally just said, here's a couple things about Chrysandra. give us a intro, and there were so many things of like, while I'm watering my house plants, she's out there, and I was like, why is it beating me up today? But it was.
I think the laundry piece was the one where I just bit over laughing.
Oh yeah.
It really got us. Well, thank you for joining us. You just got back.
Yes,
right?
Yes. I did just get back from Tennessee in Nashville. Have you guys been?
Oh yeah.
Yes.
Mhm.
Yes.
I grew up like 2 hours from there, and so I was there all the time.
Really? Where did you grow up?
Well, good old Southern Indiana. Yeah.
Nice.
And then I lived in Knoxville for 3 years, so I was
Okay.
going to Nashville a lot. It's
I love
great.
that. It is great. Like in Nashville, I feel like you can go 30 minutes in every direction and you see a little piece of
Mhm.
the world, which is so special. But I was at the Grand Ole Opry, so that was
Let's
pretty
go.
special.
Yeah.
Yes.
It's pretty
Yes.
That is sweet.
Yes.
What were you doing there again?
Have you guys heard of K-Love?
Well,
K-Love. Yeah, exactly.
Oh, yeah.
Exactly.
no biggie.
It was their fan awards. And so got to be on the red carpet and help host, and it was very special. But I was, like today, a little bit delayed, and I was 2 hours delayed on my flight.
Oh no.
So I had to get ready in the airport bathroom. I had like 3 minutes to change and to get there.
Oh my
Seriously,
gosh.
I think if people knew the behind scenes, which
Right.
I think you guys are uncovering today, don't judge me. It's not as smooth as you see in pictures.
Fair enough.
Yeah.
But made it, and it was wonderful.
that's
So
so awesome.
highly recommend it. You guys should come with me next year.
It'd be
Great.
fun.
Say less.
We'd be in.
Turn my headphones down.
Oh, you really want your
Yeah.
Parker's usually like, let's go.
I'm like, yeah. No, that's great.
All right.
I was so loud in my ears.
But one of the first guests, you guys, was really hilarious. It was, they were like, do you want to talk to Kevin Swaros? I'm not even saying his last name, but I didn't really know who it was. And
Yeah.
I was like, oh, sure. Like, anybody. And so they just brought him over. And I was like, so where did people know you from? And he's like, well, it was the most watched movie in the world, Hercules.
Oh
And
my
I
gosh.
was like, oh, of course. So
Love
one of
that.
those things.
That is wild. That's so funny.
Yes.
So were you kind of like interviewing people as they showed up, or post, or what was kind of the
So
role
they
you
were
played?
all entering. So I was so late. So I went behind scenes. This guy was giving me a really hard time, and I was like, "You guys have to just get me on a golf cart. Like, I know I was supposed to be here like 3 hours ago, but get me there. Get me there. I'm supposed to be hosting people." And they brought me in a golf cart, and then like 2 seconds into it, Jeremy Camp like hopped in. He's like, "Is it okay if I come with you?" I was like, "Sure, jump on in." And then it's all these people, but you get there, and it's where all the artists and musicians
Nice.
and authors and actors and actresses that they were going into, and then they go into the Grand Ole Opry. So we get to ask
Sweet.
them funny questions.
I love that.
Incredible.
Yeah, but I don't think as good as you guys. I think that, like, if
I
you
don't
come
know.
next year, it'll be brought up 10 notches.
Well, hey, say less.
Say less. We'll be there. We'll be there. You're like your hometown.
Gang gang.
Yeah.
Pull out your cowboy boots.
I do not own a single.
I mean your cowboy boot Crocs.
You
He's a
don't?
big Crocs guy.
Okay. Okay. I'm getting the full
This is-
picture.
This is a recurring theme. He likes to roast me for my Crocs.
Can you blame me? You
Yeah.
can. Yeah.
Yeah, I can.
You can.
I can.
I think one of the cool things, and maybe people don't know this, it feels to me like I think you get this really awesome platform because of the calling, and that's kind of what feels like one of the very foundational things.
yes.
And so can you just, for those people who don't know what the calling is, can you just kind of let us know a little bit about how it started, what it is?
Yes.
I was actually thinking about, when was the last time I saw you? And I think
know.
me and Sevi and another friend were at one of your like banquets at a house. This is probably like 10, 12 years ago.
Yes.
And we were at, I don't know if it was your parents' house.
My dad's.
Yeah. And so we showed up and we were like helping just like provide. And so I think I
Aw.
was like, man, maybe that might have been the last time I saw you. And then we graduated, did all that. But yeah, let people know what the calling is, because I love what you're doing and want more people to know
Aw.
about it.
Well, thank you, Matt. And Yeah, this is so special how, like, God's timing is so profound, and it seems like yesterday, but also it's been too long.
I know.
So it's great to be here. When I was 18 years old, I went to Bear Creek High School. I don't know if anyone here knows Bear Creek. I have to give a shout
I
out.
was gonna say.
Public high school in Lakewood.
It's in Lakewood, yeah.
Yeah, in Lakewood, and I was in a class called Senior Project. But, you know, it was 2,000 students, and for some reason, Jesus has just always had me in different leadership positions, and it's just been for me a way to serve and to give back and a good way to get involved with people and organizations. So at the time, I was student body president and varsity cheerleading captain and varsity track and National Honor Society. I don't know, just he had the whole, like, is all the cards down. But the senior project class was almost like everything that you are was going to be displayed. And my mom was a teacher, too, at the school, so there was a lot of pressure. And I had just come to just this wholehearted surrender of knowing Jesus and wanting to live for him and him alone, and grew up loving him. But it's like this layer of, this is what my life's going to be all about. And I was praying, like, Lord, okay, in this senior project class, all these kids, like, my friends, they know what they're going to do. They're going to write cookbooks. They're going to build snowboards. They're going to take dance lessons. And everyone was a perfect niche for that soul. But for me, I felt so lost. And I think that's for a lot of people when we're searching for God's purpose for us, that everyone seems to have it all together. They know exactly what they're supposed to do, but we don't feel like we have that unique calling. And so I felt lost for a couple weeks, and I was like praying and begging and going to youth group and asking different people what they thought I should do. And then when I least expected it, I got this vision. So I was in the middle of a high school passing period, which I like to call, like, I think it's like a modern zoo. Like, it's a human zoo.
No kidding.
Yeah, because, like, and especially like a 5A school, and the hallways at the time were even I'm not sure what they are at every school, but I think it's similar. They're smushed, got the lockers, and I was walking, trying to hurry up to not get tardy to my class, and the Holy Spirit just stopped me in the middle of the hallway, and he was like, Chrysandra, and, like, literally stopped me. It's like, so many of my children are afraid to go after things I'm calling them to. Tell them not to be afraid. And then he gave me, like, this vision of bringing people together, and, like, it's like all these lights, and, like, you could feel, like, the warmth of the Holy Spirit and the gospel of what he's done for us. And if the world was to know that each single person has a unique calling to live out, and to know that that's where we find abundant life is in Jesus alone and that unique calling, and that brings heaven to earth, no one will be the same. And that really is, that's what life's about. So this whole thing started in high school. So I have a huge heart for high school students and that whole realm, and I've been doing it ever since. So it's what I feel like I've been born to do. So, you know, at the calling we have, we've seen that so many people are afraid to go after the dreams that God's called them to. And there's no reason to be afraid, because if God has given us a dream and we're not living it out, we're wasting it. So we don't want people to die with regret, and we want to help them go after it. So we do that through lots of different platforms, from conferences and workshops, seminars, and we have different media outlets now too. So it's just been blossoming over the years, but just asking people what would they do if they knew they couldn't fail, and then letting them step out in faith to do it. So it's usually you have to have a culture of belief, and then that's all people really need to know, that they're believed in and God believes in them, so they can do it.
That is awesome.
Yeah.
That's so fun. So let's see that.
Sorry, it was a lot.
No,
That was a lot.
great.
I think what's really cool is, like, I think sometimes it can be easy to start things.
Yeah.
And what's really neat to see is that you've continued this on. Like, this wasn't just kind of a flash pan thing when you were a senior in high school, but rather you were like, no, I'm going to commit to this. And you're like, we even just with going to the, you know, the fan wards, and you're like, I got to change in the bathroom. I believe there's probably hundreds of moments that felt like that, as trying to run the calling of, like, you have to jump through hurdle after hurdle. This isn't as easy.
Yeah.
Saying yes to God in something like this isn't just like now everything is just set in stone for me. Like, I just imagine there's been a lot of hard work. So just fun to honor you and be like, this is cool after how many years of it has it been?
I'm getting old, so now I'm 35.
So
it was 2007.
Yeah.
So over 17, almost.
Almost 2 decades.
Wow.
That's awesome. So that's really cool to see.
And that's a really great point too, Matt, of just like mentioning it's usually the hardest thing you could ever do to follow after God's calling on your life. And I think that's something that people just have to digest, but not stop them, but to realize that when the different giants come up, you do not turn back. Like, you keep on walking forward. Mm-hmm. And I think just as the church and us as his kiddos, like, we're in this training ground and we're meant to get to the other side.
Yeah.
That's good.
So that's been just under now half of your life you've been doing this. Which is awesome. I think when you commit to something for that long, like you start to see the fruits really like flourish, which is really cool. Mm-hmm. In that, I'm sure there have been a lot of times you questioned it as well. You were kind of questioning what you were selling almost.
Yeah.
Whether it was true for you as well. How do you navigate like those times of doubt where you're also like, is this really my calling? While telling people like, hey, there's no way God's gonna fail, if you're honoring what he's called you to. Mm-hmm.
That's such a good question. I think in our journey and our adventure of going after what Jesus is calling us to, he'll always have this like dance, or, I think for gentlemen it's a little bit different, and like us ladies have some verbiage, but this imagery of him wanting to know our hearts. And so he'll always have us in different circumstances where, am I more important or is the dream more important? Mm-hmm. And he wants that dream to come alive more so than anyone else. But he's our number one goal. And it's in getting to fulfill our God-given dreams that we're able to get to know his heart and what he likes, what he went through, what, just this whole essence of getting to know Jesus's heartbeat and how we can be him to everyone around us. And, early on, and even to this day, there's been several different circumstances, but he had me give up the calling. Like in college, I started it in high school, and then we did one event, and then he's like, Chrysandra, am I more important or is the dream more important? And I was like, you're more important. And, gave it up, and it was really hard. It was really humbling, and then he gave it back. So I think just having that testing, like, it's almost like the Abraham and Isaac moment where we really have to be having that surrender to give it up at any moment. Yeah. And, we had an event at Red Rocks Amphitheater, and that was a huge Red Sea miracle. But then 3 weeks later, was diagnosed with Lyme disease, and we had a felon that stole all the money. And again, it was this point of like, do you love me? Do you trust me? You were expecting to fly to the ends of the earth at this very moment. Will you trust me to fly back to your nest? And I literally had to. And so it's just I think when we see it's not about just like making it to a certain destination, but allowing him to take us on the scenic route. It's really beautiful, and it allows us to persevere through those trials. Yeah, totally. And so I love that was a great question.
Well, that's good. I think it's really cool. I mean, it's like, because I lead worship. That's a big part of my job. Yeah. And it's like, there's Sundays I pull up, and it's like, I don't want to sing. It's like, maybe I had a bad weekend, or maybe I'm just tired, it's all these things. But when you choose to sing anyways, or when you choose to trust, when you choose to endure, I think you can, you end up getting like a 50,000 foot perspective on it in the long run. So that's really cool.
Yeah. I love that. It is like that mental discipline. And I've been really humbled at moments of like, Chrysandra, you need to go back to the basics of like the very beginning of having that wholehearted surrender. Cause we try to make so many things what they should be. I mean, this recent episode of the Kayla Fan Awards, like, really, Lord, the flight's 2 hours delayed and getting ready in the airport and it's disgusting in here. And now they won't let me into the event. Like, I think it's just, this mental awareness that in Jesus's eyes, he's like, I'm making a great story out of this. So you get to just, we've been walking on this journey together, and you get to trust me in a different dimension. But isn't it funny that he continually wants us to grow?
So in those rocky paths, did you like find it hard to come back to him?
That's such a great question. It was really hard. I think, I just remember the essence of like Red Rocks, for example. I was in college when that happened, in college senior, and
you were running at the time too.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah, I was.
That's how you coped with your. That's how you coped with
well,
like.
I was a sprinter in high school, and they just needed extras. This is not like the team now, but back in the day, they just needed people. And my friend Christine, she was like, "Oh, you can come on the cross country team," and I could barely run like 5 minutes. Eventually, I learned to like actually love it. But yeah, so I just had to persevere through this really hard moment, especially having the event at Red Rocks. I had changed my degree from teaching to business, and my family, they all have like very secure jobs. So it's like teacher, nursing, engineer, and that's just like for my mom and my sister and my dad, and then the list goes on and on for all extended family. So entrepreneurship is not well known in our heritage. And so to go into business, they were like, well, where's your real job? So I did the calling. This is like April. I was going to graduate in May. Supposed to be my full-time career, right? And then to find out, and it was actually my mom that found out that the gentleman I was partnered with was a felon, and for everything to be stolen, it was extremely devastating. And so to trust Jesus in that moment, it was a big test of faith. And I feel like we should get used to these moments of being tested, but it felt very lonely, and it felt like I was a failure in a lot of ways, that everything that I thought Jesus would come through for, of course I'm following him fearlessly, that it should look a certain way. And he was like, nope, that isn't my way, and you're going to go with me on the scenic route. So he gave me this picture, and through that was able to develop different talents. Someone recruited me to go in to be a character actress, so to be some of our favorite Disney characters and mermaids. Love and Miss Colorado. So if that hadn't happened, then these other huge blessings wouldn't have come to be.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Speaking of Miss Colorado, right now, you are currently Miss World International Miss Monaco. Is that the title?
No, it's like Globe World. What is this thing?
Yeah, tell us about it.
Well, it was really special. So I did Miss Colorado, Miss America back in the day, and was recruited because of the charity, The Calling. The main lady said, "Oh, it's a great way to highlight your charity and your platform." And it was one of the best experiences of my life. I love that it was, there might be some hearsay on the outside, but when you're in it, they really want you just to be the best self. So it's not really about winning but really developing all your gifts and talents. So then recently, last year, there was more awareness in my family line that Princess Grace Kelly, she's a cousin on my mom's side, and the nation of Monaco asked me to represent them in this pageant last year. And I actually, I was asked to come back this year. So I am going back this year, and it's just been a really fun opportunity to, just to be light in dark places around the world.
That's so cool.
That's cool.
Yeah.
I know you go ahead. You have a serious question. Mine's not.
I was going to say, for so many of these pageants and these competitions, I don't know what the proper term is.
Yeah.
There's a lot of people who don't know Jesus in them. Mm-hmm. That's just the reality of the world that we live in.
Yeah.
How do you, because a lot of people that don't follow Jesus might not understand what your charity, your nonprofit is, and why it's important. How do you talk about it? to people that don't follow Jesus?
Well, I think, learning discernment, it's been very humbling, and I think I've mixed it up. I've gone the wrong way, but I think the humble approach of allowing people to open up about where they're at in their faith allows there to be an open door. I think our actions speak a lot louder than our words, and it'll ultimately come out. And, with social media or, people Google your name, they're going to find everything out about you in a second anyways. So it's more so your actions around them and being a witness. So I have found that to be just the best way for me to share the gospel in a lot of ways. And that's in the pageant realm, but even just recently too, it was out of the blue, and one of our sponsors with the calling, he was like, Chrysandra, do you want to be a part of Earth Day? And I was like, Earth Day? Well, sure. I might have heard of it here and there, but haven't really been. I should be better, like, with sustainability.
But it's like, how do you be a part of Earth
I know.
Day?
When they were like, we want you just to share about the calling and your efforts internationally, especially in Haiti. And sitting next to me, I was unaware of who would be other panelist speakers. And there was a gentleman that was representing all of India as a health and wellness coach. And then they were like, and this guy is Sheik. I had no idea what a sheik was, and I was kind of like touching his shoulder. I tend to like touch things. I'm very kinesthetic, love just like being in person. And later on, I kept on seeing all these people come over to him, and this lady whispered in my ear, because I was like, who, like, what is a sheik? She goes, it's like a king. And I was like, oh, so this is the king of Dubai. And so to be a witness of the gospel in those situations, I didn't have to mention anything. I think that they knew that I was a Christian. I got to share about the calling. They were sitting right behind me when I was saying to help people go after their God-given dreams. The future belongs to those who dream. And honestly, it opened up a platform for us to be able to collaborate, and he'll be on an upcoming radio show here soon for the calling. So
that's really cool.
Yeah. So I think it's, but it's hard I think every situation's different. Like Jesus might have you say, this is your time. Like you need to get to know Jesus right now. And even Rick Warren recently, I'm getting my doctorate at Oral Roberts University.
Cool.
And Rick Warren was the keynote speaker at their graduation. And he was sharing how he was in China. And long story short is that, he was walking, like kind of living life with these huge academics of Harvard of China, but, communists. And he, towards the end of one of the dinners, wanted to get to know Jesus. And it was at a dinner table. So, like, it took a long time to get there, but then Jesus opened up the door. So I think you just pray that the Holy Spirit will overtake us at any moment, do what he wants to do.
That's really cool.
That's cool. Do you have to do a talent for Miss Monaco?
Thankfully, no. But I did for Miss Colorado.
Well, what was your talent?
Did you just sprint? You just run really fast?
I wish. That would have been a great idea. I should have done that.
Like,
well,
you want to see me run there and back again?
You guys, most of these girls, they had been doing pageants since they were little. Literally, I've only done 2 pageants. I did the Miss Colorado one and then just the one last year. I just went for it. And I was Belle from Beauty and the Beast.
Nice.
And I did a speaking engagement. Like, so I spoke as if I was Belle about being and displaying inner beauty. But they didn't play the background music like they were supposed to, like to have the full effect. And I gave it to them, but they said it was too late. And I think that would have made a difference.
That might have helped you.
They threw it.
I know.
They threw it.
Payton, what would be your talent, Payton? Putting you on the spot. I know it's not bowling.
She would
We talked
be a
about that
great
earlier.
It's not bowling.
It'd be a great bell.
Yes.
If you had to be a Disney, if your character was a Disney princess.
I'd be Cinderella.
Okay.
Mm.
Yes.
There you go.
Yes.
What about you?
Well, if I had
you
to
were
be
a Disney princess,
Moana. That's
Wait,
right.
what'd you say?
Moana.
There was just
Wow.
She gets to travel the world.
That's a fun
There was
one.
just a teaser for Moana 2. Came out today.
Sponsoring this podcast.
I did
I
see
wish.
that. I saw that.
The trailer was today?
Yeah, a little
I
teaser.
gotta watch it. I asked that question partially because Ash, my wife, was like, Parker's talent would be a bunch of glass cups, and he would be the one playing a song by
Hey, shout
letting
out
your
Like
fingers
Miss
in-
You know.
Congeniality.
Yeah, where it's like ding, ding, ding.
I can see you in a skirt.
You pulled off well.
It's a kilt, okay?
It's a kilt.
It's like what's the? It's not
Or
a
the
purse.
ribbons around like the beard,
You know me.
maybe.
You know.
While we're talking about Disney princesses, we always have a recurring segment where we do like an Instagram poll and let people kind of be a part of the show. And this one was, what is better, Disney princesses or Disney villains?
Ooh.
And I know what you guys voted. I'll get to you guys. What would you
Okay.
choose? Because I can only imagine which one you might choose for this.
I definitely would not pick the villains.
All right, that's what I figured. Why did you guys pick princesses?
As compelling as some of the Disney villains are, you're still you don't want to root for the bad guy. Like in every movie, it's like
Yeah.
I'm rooting for Belle, and Gaston can go.
To the
Yeah.
East House
Anyways.
forever.
Anyways,
Go to the guest house.
The guest house forever.
The barn.
Barn. He's in the barn.
but it's like you want to root for him. You know, in all the movies, it's like I want to root for Rapunzel. You know,
Yeah.
Why
would you pick the bad guy?
Yeah.
that's
Oh,
that's a pretty
You were
good
you were
answer.
for the villains?
Yeah, I think so. Here was my take. I was like, without the villains, you don't get the princess story. You don't really get like
True.
Same without
like,
the princess. You don't get the
Ariel.
princess story.
Ariel kind of seems like the bad guy to her family if you get rid of Ursula. It just seems like she's leaving her family for like forks and this boy, you know. So I went villains because I was like, listen, I think they're just people that maybe that
They
make
need
the
some
story.
extra love.
You need
Yeah, they need some extra love.
Yeah.
I'm trying to. There is some stories where like the bad guy becomes the good guy in the next.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Have you seen Avatar: The Last Airbender? Zuko.
No.
Oh yeah,
You guys haven't?
No,
It's my
I
favorite
want
show of all
to.
time.
it's a good one.
It's on Netflix.
Does Disney
So-
own it now? Would you say Vader's a villain in
Yes.
Disney?
Yes.
I know there is like Princess Leia. I don't really think she's a Disney princess, but
Did you?
Vader becomes a good guy.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, but he also. Did you watch Obi-Wan Kenobi?
I know he was bad.
Yeah,
I know he was bad.
he's the baddest in multiple senses.
I need to rewatch Star Wars too.
You should.
I've
I just did
never
a
seen
Star
it.
Wars
Yes.
trivia night last night.
You could spend a lot of hours. You did do a trivia
I
night.
did. We tied for second place.
If we had to say who is the best Disney princess, like if we had to rank number one,
Ooh,
Man,
that's a hard one.
are you a big fan of Belle?
I do love Belle, but I think I love Princess Aurora, so Sleeping Beauty.
Mhm.
Isn't she's like the OG,
Yeah.
one of the very first ones?
her and Snow White.
Snow
Snow
White.
White.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mhm.
That might be
Best
good.
Disney princess. Obviously, like Moana's great.
Yeah.
Her story's compelling. Man,
But how about like princes?
princes.
Like, did you guys ever
Hey.
aspire to be like one of them?
I try and live every day like I am.
Or was it just
Kristoff.
Ken?
I'm just trying to be Kristoff. He's just
Yes.
a little guy. You know, just a,
I can't remember the name of.
it's
uh,
you grew up in Christian circles, so he's like good guy loves the Lord. You know, you hear that all the time. That's that guy.
I don't think he's a Disney prince, but Li Shang from
Mm.
Mulan. I thought he was the coolest.
He is pretty cool.
He was very cool.
He was the
Yes.
coolest.
Yes.
It was Mulan, a Disney princess.
Technically, even
I
though
like
it's
her a
like
lot.
Mm-hmm.
she's like the exception to the rule, I think, because she
Mhm.
doesn't have the lineage or whatever.
I liked her a lot.
Yeah.
Yes, I know a lot about Disney princesses. Okay,
Yeah, this is a new side of you that we're discovering.
listen, I cry watching Paddington. Okay,
I feel
What-
like it's
what can I
inside
do?
of every guy. They
can
actually
I do?
really like
Cry on
Disney
Paddington.
princesses, don't you think,
Yes.
Peyton? Yeah.
Yeah.
Any of them that are worth anything.
This is the part where we're like, Peyton, you got some great questions. What do
You
what do
can
you
put
got
us back
for
on
us?
track.
Yeah, you got to help my sidetrack. Thanks to everyone who voted, by the way.
Yeah, that was a great question.
Here's the deal. You guys might be surprised by this. I forgot to give you guys the final stats that I did not. I only swayed by like 2 votes. Okay. It was Disney villains at 43%, Disney princess at 57%.
Wow.
There's a lot of villains.
There's
a lot of villain fans.
Satan and Jesus. Like, you can't have, like, Jesus's heroic tale without
That's true.
Satan.
Yeah.
God's tale.
Man. Sorry, Ursula.
I know.
She never got good anyways, but. All right, Payton, what do you got for us?
So, in your busy life, what are some of your hobbies that you have?
That's a great question. I love it. Well, I love imagining different things for every day. So I love my dog, and her name is Imagine, and her nickname is Magi.
Nice.
I was tempted to bring her today, but things
Next
are
time.
already going a little bit. Yeah, she would sit right here by us ladies. She does go a lot of places with me. I got her certified, so. But yes, I love playing with her, and we go for runs, and I love hiking, exploring. And I just have a passion for traveling and experiencing new things. Recently went horseback riding in Arizona, which was beautiful. And so I love outside the box adventures. So if someone's like, let's go to Antarctica, I'd love to go, or go swim with blue whales. It'd be so fun. So I'm a little bit outside the box, but it does fuel my soul. So I love coffee, and I love journaling, and I'm pretty close to Red Rocks, so I love just like sitting there and remembering like what the Lord has done. And so, yeah, I'm pretty basic too when it comes to like the necessities, like
Of course.
the Bible, coffee, journal. And if you had a fireplace mixed in there, I'd be happy soul.
That's awesome. As you talked about traveling, I know recently you got to go to Israel and provide, I think it was some humanitarian aid effort. But like, tell us a little bit about like, right now there's a lot going on. Micah on the couch over there is actually he's gonna be going there in July. Yeah, get in there. If you guys didn't know, Micah's been a summer intern. Dude, thanks for hanging with us today. But Micah's been going there. He's gonna be going to Israel in July. And
incredible.
I mean, kind of what we know right now is it's a tough place right now.
Yes.
And lots are happening. So I'm just curious about like, how did that come about, and why did you say yes? Kind of knowing the situation. I'd love to hear some of your story.
Well, I should be wearing my Israel necklace right now. I was given a few, and we're supposed to like give them away, and I keep on forgetting to put on my next one. But next time I'm here, I'm going to. So let's see, 2016, there's an organization called Israel Collective, and it's connected with Christians United for Israel with Pastor Heggie. And Israel Collective, they bring on influential leaders to go on a free trip to Israel. So I got to go on my first trip to Israel in 2016, and I think they were just lacking for numbers because I am like the least of these to go over. Some of the contestants on there was former Miss America to finalists of The Voice, The Bachelor, and there was only like 5 of us ladies, and it was like 40 guys, so it was pretty intimidating for the first trip, but it was completely life-changing, and we got to meet the nation's leaders and see what was going on, and just know Jesus's heart for his homeland and what he has in store for the people and for the nation, and that it's our ultimate home as well when heaven comes to earth. And so this year, when everything happened on October 7th, they were looking for advocates. So I got a random email. It was supposed to be alumni of Israel Collective to see who would want to come back. And I guess a lot of people were pretty hesitant when they got the email. I got the email and I said yes right away because it was one of the best trips of my whole entire life. But it was just being full aware that it was going to be a completely different trip and that we were going to be eyewitnesses of the horror and terror of the atrocities that happened October 7th and that have been happening ever since. So went over, I think, March, April-ish, and we went, we landed, and just even in the airport, you see all the hostages' faces, and, what's beautiful about Israel is that they're such a close-knit community. So it might be the United States of America, but they put a name to a face, and they are fighting for every single person to come home. And everyone's just so interknit with each other. And so we saw that right off the plane, and we went to, we first went to the Sea of Galilee. So we started the morning. It was like 6 o'clock in the morning. We got to go out there and just to imagine, Peter walking out on water, and just the essence of, it's really hard to believe Jesus to do things that seemingly impossible all the time. But he's like, I want you to walk on water wherever you're at in life. And so that's how the trip began. And when we came off the boat, there was actually fishermen with like a whole like sea of fish. And that's, in scripture, just where Jesus tells them to put out the net one more time and to pull in the fish. And for anyone tuning in that needs that ounce of hope, like even if you've tried multiple times, like for multiple seasons, if Jesus is telling you to try one more time, like don't doubt it. Like, he's going to bring in the fish at the perfect time. So we saw that coming off, and then we headed straight north. So we went to Syria and Lebanon on the border, and you could hear all the bombs going off. The people, the residents at all the hotels, they've been taking in the residents who have had to be evacuated. So there was lots of families and kiddos, and I love kids. So one of the first things that we got to do is just, like sit in a space like not as cool as this, but, just like couches and like be with the kids and play with them, maybe their hair, or do a funny TikTok dance or something just to bring them joy and to experience, just to hear their stories of what they're going through, and that they said it is a modern day Holocaust. So we started up there, and then we went down to the southern border, and we got to go to the kibbutzes. And the kibbutzes, they're like neighborhoods. So it's a lot like, it reminds me like an Acts 2 church where they were living life together and everything was shared in common. And there were so many kibbutzes that were infiltrated by all of these terrorists and Hamas. And it was very heartbreaking. You could see blood stains, and we got to walk through lots of homes, and I can even bring some imagery of different artifacts that we saw, but it's been so recent they haven't really touched anything. We know where one room they trapped all these women in there, and they raped them and terrorized them, and a lot of people want to believe that this never happened, and they want to fight for the piece of land of Israel. And what's amazing about it, there's no political issue. It's a humanitarian issue of just every human life has a right to live, and no matter your religion, no matter your background, like every life has a right to live. And for some reason, they don't believe that about the Jews, and the list goes on and on. But I'll just say it was life-changing, and they said that when you become an eyewitness, you're responsible for taking action in it. So just anyone tuning in that wants to be part of taking action, it's really just speaking about it, and it's just sharing your story and what you've heard and how to be an advocate for the land. So Micah, I love that you're going to Israel, and I'll be going back as well. We're trying to take some trips. They want to do some Friends of Chrysandra trips, which is fun. So maybe you guys could all come with me.
That'd be good. As you talked about that, and thanks for sharing.
Yeah.
Is there, and again, it's hard to kind of lump it into one message.
Yeah.
But if you, based off the experience and what you're seeing, or maybe talking to people on the ground, do you feel like there is one kind of major takeaway that stands out to you? And maybe you alluded a little bit to it, but like this is, as I've experienced that or talked with people, here's kind of the one thing that if I come back home and try to help inspire people here in America who that is not their reality, this is the one message that I would maybe share or try to inspire people with that I learned from there or heard from people there?
I think that, so for Israel, the one takeaway message is to know that it's not down the street. It's actually, like, if it's happening there, it'll happen here. And it's probably going to be quicker than we realize. So there's no indecision. So making no decision is making a decision. So standing up against terrorism is something that every one of us should do. And it starts with just vocalizing it and having enough confidence and courage to take a stance. And I think there's a lot of people that are voicing their opinions they're making a lot of noise and they're seeming like they're a lot of people. And it's like the giants or people that want to be intimidating, but it's time for us to gently and confidently and courageously speak out and say that we stand with the people of Israel and we do not stand for terrorism and they have a right to life.
Yeah, one of the things you said of just like everyone has a right to live. And, you had that moment where it was like, hey, there are kids and families on both sides that are being affected by terrorism. And we probably here where everyone lives, we can find someone who is having a hard life.
Yeah.
That also, it's like there's ways we can stand up for people here and also abroad where you're going to be heading. So thanks for just kind of sharing about that experience. I know it is.
Thanks for bringing it up.
Just very different than what we get to live here.
Yeah.
I think we're very blessed by what we get to experience in our daily life.
And Matt, just to say too, if anyone is interested in going, there is, so it is a war zone. So you land in, and a lot of us, I had never been in a war zone before prior to that situation. So it is, it's a little scary. You hear the bombs, but honestly, they surround you with security and IDF soldiers, and the people need our support. Like, you wouldn't believe how many people and leaders they were surrounding us the whole time, just random souls that said, thank you so much for being here. And they need help on the farms. You could go collect tangerines. We did that, which was actually very enjoyable and peaceful. But yeah, if you have that on your heart, would love to connect you guys.
That's cool. Payton.
Yes.
Running it back to the Payton playbook. You
got anything for us?
That. Yeah, the Payton
playbook. I want to get a copy.
It's a good copy. I need a copy of it. It'd go a long way.
So I'm just wondering, like, when you were little, did you see yourself being this amazing leader that you are today?
Aw, well, just for you even to say that, Payton, is very kind. I don't think I appreciate that verbiage. I think most of my life in these scenarios, I feel like I am outside my body, which is really strange, but it's almost like I'm watching the Lord do his thing and I'm just with him. So I think when I was little, the Lord had me grow up. My parents were divorced when I was little, when I was 3, and it was just me and my sister, and so had to encounter a lot of I had to be fearless in a lot of different situations. And so, just it's hard to be going to 2 different families. And to this day, it's still hard, for all the different holidays. And what's a blessing is that you have 2 families that love you just as much as one. But when I was little, I did get to glean that each one of them had all these beautiful gifts to pour into my heart and soul that have allowed me to, I guess, just continue to fly in the midst of different adversities. And I wanted to be a trainer for Shamu for a very long time. And I still, orca whales are my favorite. All black and white animals, you guys. I've learned about myself, which, isn't it interesting? We ask our heart questions and they're like, you're astounded that that's really the answer. But I've learned, I love orca whales, Dalmatians, zebras, penguins.
So funny.
I know. And then, it's all of them. It's hilarious. But I look back, I think that I would be proud. I feel like I'm doing what God's called me to do, and it's been really hard. But I had various moments, and one in particular that I could have gone, especially like in college. I think you have a lot of pressure from outside sources of like where to go, or even like except in high school and middle school all the time. And I was pushed in one way with being a teacher, and then Jesus was just like, Chrysandra, you would be a teacher and you would love it, but you'd always have a what if. Like, what if the calling, quote unquote, was your full-time job? And I've just realized that life is so short, and even like we may just have today or even 120 years from now. Like, I want to go all out. And if Jesus really is who he says he is, he's so faithful. And, you know, it might end up that we're on a cross or a different story, but ours doesn't end here when we're here, done on earth. Yeah.
What would you say to the person who, maybe is 16, 17, 18, maybe when you started a nonprofit, who is maybe doubting their purpose or don't believe they have one, or they maybe have an idea, but they just don't know where to get started? If you could be like, I want to sit in that room and give them 3 things of like, I understand where you're coming from. Yeah. But here's 3 things that I would just say, if you want to start leaning into that, what would you recommend to them? Tell them to get moving on.
Yes. Well, I love it. I heard, Payton, that you had an incredible talk recently about confidence, and I think that is the beginning root of our releasing of our God-given calling. So it's in us knowing Jesus, like, who is Jesus? And if I am a child of God, if I am a son or daughter of God, that makes me fearless. It makes me confident. It makes me beautiful, handsome, all the things. And so I think putting on, like, dressing ourselves with that inner courage of who we are, and then being centered on the gospel of what he's done for us, knowing that he is the one that brings the abundant life, and he'll bring our heart's desires. I think that's the thing that we don't realize, is that he does immeasurably more than we could ever ask or imagine. And when we just lay that inside of Jesus's hands, it doesn't usually look like the recipe we would ever fix up, but then it tastes even better. And the next step is being fearless enough to ask your heart, because no one can tell you this, but the Holy Spirit will. And ask your heart, what would you do if you knew you couldn't fail? So say, what would I do if I knew I couldn't fail? Like, I love you, Lord, and I want to do your will. And the answer that comes to mind, and starting to dream with him, like actually dream, which I think a lot of Christians are afraid to do. People in general are afraid to do. They're afraid to really believe or even think of something different than their current reality or anyone else's current reality. But when we see anyone that we look up to, they had to do that. They had to think of something more, something that was outside the box. And it comes in that intimacy with Jesus to do that. So go to your favorite spot. Maybe that's like a little spot at the zoo, or maybe it's at the park, or maybe it's the coffee shop. But being able to cultivate this talent, I think it is a talent to start dreaming. You will discover inside of your heart what the Lord is really leading you to do. So you'll start dreaming, and then he'll tell you, if you ask him what's the next step, not like the master plan, and he might give you glimpses of, like, the vision board going there, but then he'll say, do this next, take the next step, and then take the next one. And I think in that obedience, even if it seems so weird, like maybe you were dreaming about being, building, I just saw that they were building like a rocket, or it was like a roller coaster up to a space station or something. So maybe that was your dream, and you didn't know how you were going to do it. And he's like, actually, so go give your grandma lunch today. Like, even though it seems like totally disconnected, the Lord will start connecting all these dots, and he'll bring the right people to paint the story. So, yeah. I know it's kind of like all over the place, but he seems to be like, the Lord's like a splatter painter.
Yeah.
Like he uses a lot of different colors.
Oh, that's good. Did you have something that you were going to say? Perfect. I thought you heard you were just agreeing. You're like,
yeah.
You're a very artistic dude. You get the connection.
Could I ask you, what would you guys do if you knew you couldn't fail?
I don't often think about this. I think that, Payton, do you have something right on top of your head?
I don't know.
Yeah. I think like the concept of failure is, maybe it's something that I don't know how much I've thought about it, but I do think it's a pretty big undertone of like,
Yeah.
because I like just more peace in my life. And so the option to fail is something I often stray away from. And so it's like, how do I play it safe so that way I don't have to deal with the failure or the message of like, I'm not good enough for this.
Mm-hmm.
And so it is just a thought that I think now it's like, how do I don't like to think about it a lot because it just plays with my natural sense. If I just want to stay safe and peaceful sometimes. So I also say that to buy you guys a little bit of time to think about what your answer was while I think of mine as well.
Yeah, I think mine is like, I kind of have a niche. Like I have a zone. It's like tech, arts, like things that are just like, you just make things. But it's funny, I often find myself hitting a plateau once I go from imitation or inspiration to original creation.
Yeah.
And I think a thing for me that I was challenged in recently was like dream bigger. Just like, it's like, you don't have to make like a podcast that looks like this person's. You don't have to play guitar like this guy. You know, it's like, be who I created you to be. You know, it feels like what God's telling me. And so it's like, I feel like this push, and it's like failure for me can be just the smallest things, and those aren't really failures. They're just teaching moments. You know, they're things to help you move forward. And I think for me, it's like there would be a lot more or a lot less hesitation to do things my way, you know, and to try things my way instead of making a graphic design like this guy, making a song that sounds like this. You know, it's like all that. There would be a lot more original creation.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that.
Payton, do you have any thoughts?
Yeah, I think kind of like playing off what you said, like staying safe. Like I think I'm always in that like just play it safe zone. And I think like if I wasn't afraid of failure, like I would push myself to try all these things and push myself to get outside of my comfort zone and really find things that I'm interested in instead of just like always being like, well, I could fail at that, so I'm not going to do that.
Yeah. Have you dabbled in some things that you're like, this is one thing I would try?
Oh, always. I'm always like thinking like maybe I should try student council or be on the volleyball team. But then I'm like, well, what if I couldn't do that? And it's always the what if that like stops you. So.
Yeah. No, that's cool.
This is your time.
Full sends only.
There's no student council at like 23 years old, you know? I think a little bit with my answer, I mean, I have kind of the basics of being a husband and father. I think those are like the things that I probably would fail the most in, and also those are the most important priorities. But I think if I look beyond that, which still plays into that, I think a little bit of my story is like I got bullied a lot in middle school. And so a little bit in this job, you'll see it. I know, dude, middle school's hard. If you're in middle school out there, it gets better. It's also so hard. But I think because of some of the things I went through, it's somewhat I get to do in the current role I'm in, but helping other people believe in themselves and find opportunities to help support them of like, hey, if this is what you love doing, let's figure out how to get you on a podcast. Let's figure out how can I connect you with maybe a friend of mine who plays basketball overseas and you want to be a professional player at some point in time. So I love the connection piece of how do I get people that maybe they have somewhat arrived or they have a lot of knowledge, but how do I get them connected to people who want to get there someday?
Yeah.
I think that connection piece of just how can we inspire people who are just trying to figure out, like, do I want to live another day? And the answer should be yes. Yeah. And I know that's not how it always feels, but I think there is, there's a reason people feel that way. And I just often am like, how do we get you connected to someone who has discovered their purpose? And often we say is like, hey, when you discover your purpose, you discover a reason to live. And then you start to notice you have influence, and then you can make an impact. Yeah. And so that's kind of where that a lot of that came from is like, man, I didn't always feel like I didn't believe in myself growing up. I think there's a lot of people who I think they tried to be like, hey, there's things we're seeing. And so now it's like, how do I help other people discover that message and not just be told that, but also be like, let's get you involved with some of those leadership roles and opportunities. So that's probably my answer as I circle back around. I think it's such a great answer that like people who are listening, put in the comments, like, what would you do if you couldn't fail? Or just ask yourself that. I think it's a huge question.
Yeah.
Yes. And then we allow it to be more common for us to be able to help each other dream. Because, like, we all need to be pulled out. I mean, I'm challenged by the question all the time. Like, ever since the Lord brought it to me, I'm like, oh, yikes. Like, it's kind of intimidating too. Like, when an idea does come to mind, you're like, all right, like, am I going to take the next step or not? And then it's always just this journey.
Yeah, it's so true. You know, as you, again, this might be like another thing that you're like, hey, this is a journey that I stepped into that I didn't know. And maybe you're one of those questions where like, if I couldn't fail, what would I do? You've written a book. I saw you brought one today.
Yes.
Were you ever like, I want to write a book someday? Or is that kind of came about like, all right, let's do this. I don't know what I'm doing, but let's just figure out what it's about. And
well, you know, it all, when the event at Red Rocks happened, so you guys, back in the day, it was not common to have a Christian concert at Red Rocks. And so I'm the youngest person, thank you, Micah, to put on an event with the most amazing team. It was us students at Red Rocks Amphitheater. So it was the first Christian contemporary event ever. And
awesome.
It was very special. We had Switchfoot, and it really was a whole bunch of us young 20-somethings putting it on. And most concert producers for over 40 years, they hadn't even attempted, like, they don't attempt to do an event at Red Rocks because it's considered the world's #1 amphitheater. But we did that, and it led the way for Hillsong to come in. And the funny fact is that my sister was studying abroad in Sydney in 2010, and I went to Hillsong, of course, half-hour away. I had to go. And my sister was like, these people are crazy. And I was like, they're full of the Spirit, guys. But talked to Luke Webb, and he's with the booking agent at the time. And I was like, Luke, you guys have to come to Red Rocks for our event with the calling. And he's like, what's Red Rocks? So he had never heard about it, and they weren't able to come that year with us, but they ended up coming the next year. So Hillsong was there the following year, and then that led the way for now everyone comes. Yes. Now Caleb has a huge thing, a couple days. And
everyone does.
Now everyone's like coming in, but we were part of that movement. I think you were part of it too.
I think so. I think, was that 2011?
Yes. And the reason, you guys, the reason I brought it up is because they were like, Chrysandra, you need to write a book about this whole journey. And, you know, they were talking about the speaking engagements around the world and the books to come. And then 3 weeks later was diagnosed with Lyme disease and a felon and all these things. So the dream of a book started then, but it wasn't till over 10 years later that the book actually came out. Yes. And what's fun is that there's so many more stories in there from that gap time that I think it would help a lot more people. And the producer of The Chosen, he endorsed it, Chad Gunderson and some others. But I think just in essence, to all the dreamers, we are meant to be God's dreamer. And he's such a dreamer. So to take on that name tag, like, I'm a dreamer too.
That's cool.
That is sweet.
But yeah, I'm definitely not a great writer. And it took a long time.
You did it. This is a little bit of like a segue into SummerCon. You're going to be out here with us later this summer. And one of the things that you had mentioned was like, can we do an opportunity for some book signings, getting to meet people? And so I am like, if you're out there and you want to meet Chrysandra, join us for SummerCon, that sort of thing. Do it. And buy a book. Parker just had to go cough. But I think there's some really neat things about it. And it's awesome to see who's endorsed it, of just like, I think that just brings some power and some validity again to like, all right, I'm just leaning into what God maybe wants me to do with my life.
Yes.
And finding the right people. Again, kind of the like splatter painting that you saw. Like, how did all this come together?
Yeah.
That you went from a nonprofit to then hosting an event to then connecting with publishers.
Yes.
So,
yes.
cool.
Well, and I think that, you guys, I literally am the most unlikely person to do any of this stuff or to be around you guys or any of these events. And Jesus, like he literally will just take us on this journey. So this is after quite a long walk with the Lord of 17 plus years of the highs and lows. And I know a lot of people have been on the journey for a lot longer than that in the season of their calling. But yeah, if it can happen for me, it'll most definitely happen for you.
It's cool. You think Parker's gonna live?
No.
You want to audition for Parker's spot? Do you have a question? Do you have a question you want to ask? You don't have to, but you can come sit where Parker's at if you want. Micah's the man.
Woohoo! I love your shirt.
When I
yes.
We were just talking about his shirt today because
is it Greek?
Yes, it is actually. So
I want to go.
Yeah, it's a little bit of my heritage, a little bit. So my great grandma was from a small. Well, she and my great grandpa were both from Greece, but she was from a small town called Mistras, right outside of Sparta. So this is actually from Sparta.
Did you get that last year when you went?
Yeah.
Last summer?
Yeah. So
we were talking about this
Let's
shirt
all
today
go.
too. We need to just go on all the travels.
Yes.
We were laughing because that shirt, either you're getting muscles or it keeps shrinking every time you wash it.
It keeps shrinking. I'm not getting muscles.
I think it's muscles. I'm sure it is. I mean, I just met you today, but it's the muscles.
Yeah.
Thank you.
The college is treating you well.
It's not, no.
Did you have a question? I mean, I'm putting you on the spot, so it's like.
Yeah. Thanks for putting me on the spot.
While Parker figures out his life over there.
I think what I would ask. Actually, I feel like I have a lot of questions, but maybe the most relevant one is as far as SummerCon goes. You mentioned like having a heart for just like the young people. Like if you just had like maybe just a simple message that you would give to somebody who's young. And just wanting to seek the Lord or not really sure about where they stand with the Lord. Like how do you, what's like, you mentioned like sometimes God doesn't show you the whole plan, but just like, what's the next step of like, I'm curious about God. I'm curious about, this church that seems like maybe it's invested in me or like cares. There's something more than just people and love. Like it seems like maybe it's about this Jesus guy. What's like the next step that you would give to somebody who doesn't really know how to chase their dreams or doesn't really know where they stand about Jesus? And what would you say to somebody like that?
Such a great question. I think, I would challenge them to go where you can grow. And so that has been something that's been really helpful for me of not knowing exactly the next step, but then I know that I'm rooted in like God's goodness. And so, to go, I remember these milestones. I didn't know where to go for college. And I was like seeking everywhere and anywhere internationally, here throughout the states and Colorado, but Colorado is like my least likely spot. And there was someone that taught me, like, Chrysandra, go where you're going to get to know Jesus the most. And you were saying, for someone maybe that doesn't know Jesus, well, I would just be authentic with him. And if you're wanting to really get to understand who he is, I think that nowadays there's some really helpful tools too, like visually, with The Chosen, just like start in on that season. And there's a lot of people that are questioning who Jesus is, and it's okay to question, and it's okay to go to church and to just say, like, I'm open to it. Like, I guess I'll hear about him. Like, who is this Jesus guy? And it's okay to challenge Jesus and say, Jesus, like, if you really are real, prove it to me. And if he is the Son of God, like, he is going to prove himself true to you, and he's going to show how much he loves you individually, like only he can. And so SummerCon is such an incredible opportunity for you to get to know Jesus and for you to be able to bring friends that maybe don't know him very well. But he really he's been proving himself true to every human being since the beginning of time, that he is the King of Kings and Lord of Lords, and he's not afraid of your questioning. And I would just challenge people to dive in. And if you do know Jesus as your Lord and Savior and as your King of Kings, press into growing, and you're going to get to know him through being surrounded by incredible community here at SummerCon coming up, and being able to discover him in the Word, like diving into the scriptures. And personally, there's so many things like we can take in from around us, and even today on the podcast, like hearing this is so great. But when you step away and have that intimacy of like, Jesus, how does this apply to my life today? And what do you want me to take away from it? And allowing the space and the authenticity of like listening, which is really hard for us to do sometimes. I'm telling myself that. And then to hear him, like, I think we'll be blown away time and time again of what he really wants to speak. And just to remember like what the Lord's voice says and then what the enemy's voice says. And so, and you can just see that anything that's honorable and lovable and it's from scripture is from God. And the enemy only wants to beat you down. And so he's going to tell you the lies and the schemes of the world and to live for this world. And you could do that for a certain time, but it'll always lead to death and destruction. And so it's very pivotal when we're in these decision-making seasons, especially in middle school and high school and college and continually growing up. We're always growing. Like to this day, I feel like I'm in middle school still, like growing. And Matt probably agrees to that too. Like it's just, we always have to just like press in that Satan is so loud and he wants us to deny God and deny his goodness, even in the midst of really hard circumstances. But if we're able to know that sin, it does lead to destruction. So just don't go down that path. Just trust God's path to life.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. I think that's really cool. And just to highlight, with my last few moments on camera on my before I get kicked off.
We're so glad you're here.
Yeah, but just to highlight, like I think it's really cool. Just the ability, like Jesus is the Son of God, and and he has that authority, and we have the ability to ask him hard questions, and it's nothing that he's going to be taken back by or surprised by, and it's not he's able to handle those hard questions, and so we can just come to him. And, and to see, like, if there really is truth in Jesus and he really is the way, the truth, and the life, right, like he says, then we're able to actually ask those questions, right. And he's not going to be offended by it. And so, if he's true, then we can ask those questions. And if he's not true, then we can ask those questions and still find out. And so I think I think that's really cool. So,
yes. Yeah. I think that was a great question. And yeah, I think it's because I just saw Dallas Jenkins and Chad Gunderson's a good friend, but like The Chosen, the first scene is with Mary Magdalene and how she was demon possessed and how she was transformed by Jesus's presence, and that's how people are changed. Like it's not pressuring them or telling them a list of things that they have to change, but it's literally like encountering Jesus for ourselves and wanting to follow him, because like he gives us all of our heart desires. So great question.
So cool.
Nice.
Well, thanks for having me.
Thanks for hanging with us.
Yeah.
Parker, save me.
Save me. Welcome back. Are you okay, Parker?
Yeah, I'm fine.
Things like that happen to me all the time.
It's because the water bottle was too small.
I had one time, I was speaking, and it was to all these elderly women. There was I think there was 180 plus year olds, so that like some of them were in their hundreds. And I was speaking, and I didn't take a breath.
Oh, that'll get you.
And it was like, I thought that I was gonna.
Sometimes you just got to remove yourself from the situation.
You're like, get her a defibrillator.
No, I thought I was going to pass out. I couldn't catch my breath.
Roll over an oxygen machine.
They got plenty of them.
Right. It's a great audience to do it.
There was when I was in Boulder, there was an awesome guy who every Sunday would bring essentially cough drops for the people speaking. Every single Sunday was committed to giving the people talking a little cough drop to help. One thing that I just, someone could be listening and they don't know your full story.
Yes.
And they were like, okay, I'll just make up something like, okay, Lyme disease, worked with a felon, things. Those are some hardships, but they might also be like, things seem somewhat good. Yeah. I know and this is, you can correct me if I'm wrong, one of the harder times too was something that your sister went through, that you walked with your sister, where it felt like, from where my viewpoint is, you maybe almost lost your sister. And I think there was, kind of sitting on this end of like, life has been challenging. We could sit here for another hour or two and talk about those things. But could you maybe speak a little bit into like, a little bit of like, hey, this is what's happening with my sister. And I think just to build a little bit of the credibility of God is good and life is also still really challenging. And here's another moment that you went through that also kind of plays into this journey of what you've been going through in the last 5-10 years or so.
Yes.
But I know there's people who are listening that have lost loved ones or currently are in a season where their loved ones are just not doing so well. And so I would love to hear a bit of like your story and maybe what you would share with someone who is going through that.
Yes. I'm so glad you brought it up, because I think that adds like, isn't it interesting? Like the Lord's like stew, he like pours in these different ingredients. And you're like, no, not that.
Not that.
And now looking back, it's like that was probably one of the most important ingredients to this next chapter of life and sequel. So, so in the last 5-ish years, my sister, she started getting really sick. So she had my family it's consumed with a lot of nurses. So some of my family members were noticing like she had jaundice in her eyes, and like she just wasn't digesting things very well. And she ended up being hospitalized for a whole year with liver and kidney failure. And every single day we were like fighting for her life. They all wanted to just put her in hospice and let her die, but every day would be something different. One day I walked into the hospital room and her eye was just starting to bleed. Like I didn't even know that an eye could bleed. Just very demonic stuff too. Like, jaundice eyes, so it's yellow eyes, bleeding out of her back. So like your liver and your kidneys, like you have to have, your liver is essential for everything in your body. It kind of like detoxifies all of your other ingredients in your body. And so I was dealing with cirrhosis, and then she was on dialysis in her neck. So like she had blood coming out of her neck, and I know this is it's a lot of hard details, so you can turn this down if it's too much, but it was so challenging we're only a year apart, and she's like my twin. And for her to be experiencing such pain was, it seemed like the worst nightmare in the whole world. And then also at the time, I was engaged, and no longer engaged. It was a broken engagement, but he was also dealing with addiction. And so it was a nightmare every single day, just trying to figure out how to survive and to keep the calling going, and asking the Lord, like, what are you doing? And just being faced that to take one day at a time. And so it was just I think we go through these different seasons where we really can't go through it by ourselves, and like the Lord literally has to pick us up and hold us. So many tears and just like devastation. I was getting my master's at the time, and so I would have to like do homework in the hospital room. And my family, I mentioned earlier that my parents are divorced, and so we all just had to learn to get along, because there couldn't be any fighting at all in the room. And one day in particular, probably one of the most prominent ones, is I was down in the cafeteria. We were used to being there. It was at St. Anthony's, and was just working on homework, and my mom came down. It was just me and my mom at that moment. And she was like, Chrysandra, you need to come up and tell your sister goodbye. They have to take her into surgery because she was bleeding in her lungs. And so she was filling up with blood, and by the time I got up there, she was already incubated. And, I hope no one has seen that before, but it's a really challenging scene to see someone that's going to be taken back into surgery, and to tell them, like, to pray over. Like, I only had, like, 10 seconds and what to say. I said, Brittany, like, I love you with all my heart. You're going to be okay. And it was like God overtook me, and I like took the surgeon, and she, you know, 'cause she looked so sick. It wasn't who she is, and it wasn't who she was. And I took the surgeon. I said, she's just like me. Like, she's just a year younger than me, and this is my sister. And I was like, please save her, 'cause he was going to be doing all of this surgery, and they said it was 99.9% chance that she wasn't going to make it. So she went back for surgery, hours and hours, and they gave her over 20 pints of blood. I guess our bodies only hold 8-ish pints, and I think that's for like a man, so less than that for a little, you know, a young lady. And they said that she had passed away on the operating table, and we were just praying. Like, we asked, like, I think social media, some people see it as kind of like a burden, but it's also such a blessing for communicating the gospel and getting people to rally around for prayer. And just like this podcast, how we can surround each other with love and support. And people just started praying. They didn't know what they were praying for, but we just said she went into an operation, and just seeing like, Lord, you'll fight our battles. And just like praying, like weeping on the ground with an empty hospital room, because they had taken away the bed already. And hours later, they brought her back, said that she had passed away. And, you know, it was in the coming days that she said to my mom that she met Jesus on the beach. And she was with her dog, Buddy. And if she had a choice, so she could either go to heaven or come back, and that she would have a good life. So she is now, she got married and now has 2 babies, Denver and Maui. And, you know, so that's it was a whole year of hell. Like, it was literally just the worst. And walking step by step by that. So I think that, you know, it could have gone either way. It could have gone, you know, this beautiful scenario of what's now that she's thriving, or she could have passed away. And, you know, on the other side, just with the fiance at the time with addiction, like, that story didn't work out. And so I think we have to just weigh these scenarios of like, Lord, like, you know how to write our story, and you know so much better than we do. I think we have to continue to say, your will be done, not my will be done. And that's what like my chanting anthem was throughout that. But yeah, for anyone that's going through someone in any of those realms, I just have so much empathy and compassion. And those 2 scenarios are things that I never wish upon anybody, and just want to, but you have someone that can relate to you, and I'm standing with you. And I think the day, like, just take one day at a time. That serenity prayer is definitely something that we can cloak ourselves in.
That's good. Thanks for sharing.
Yeah.
That was really good.
And you can take that out.
No, I think that's really good. I love that. Essentially, cameras are going to be going off here soon. It'll still record. So again, I thank you for sharing, because I know there's a lot of people that are going through that, and sometimes the facade
so real.
of like, is Jesus really good? And this is what's happening in my life.
Yeah.
And hearing from people who are like, yes, even though you're going through living hell, he's still good. Even though that's might not how you like naturally feel. So I really do appreciate you sharing.
Yes.
Payton, do you kind of have any, and you don't have to, but do you have any like one last question? You're like, I really need to get this question in before we kind of wrap things up.
I think just how would you, like, are there days that you feel like you can't do it? Like, are there days that you don't want to get out of bed? And if so, like, how do you keep going?
That's such a good question. I think, let's see. There's definitely been harder days. I think when it comes to the heart, those things seem to be a lot more, like, those are the vigorous things. It's almost like these circumstances, like with my sister, like, it was awesome that I could go to the hospital and, like, feel like I was fighting for her, you know? But these things that are abstract or that are beyond our ability to like be in the presence of that, whether it's a relationship or finances or, you know, just these things that are outside of our hands. It's really hard to like surrender that and then to keep on being excited for what the Lord has in store for the day. I would say the biggest things of like having your staples. So when we first started talking, like the basics, like I love waking up with my Bible study and my journal and my coffee and my worship music. And, you know, if I don't have, there's been several days I don't have that, but you don't want to see that person because that's not really who Chrysandra is destined to be. But, you know, like having that discipline of no matter what, like I know that this is good for my soul and this is going to keep me in alignment, and I'm going to go to church. I am going to surround myself with a Bible study that can love it on me and pour into me. And it's because it's the hardest when things are not going right. So if you already like begin to put in the staples, milestones, and blockers, it helps us be able to make it through that training. And I think all of us, whether we're aware of it or not, it's like we go through Navy SEAL training in the spirit, and we're not like it's meant to break us. But if we're able to have our the Word of God and community, I believe, and Holy Spirit, like we humbly get to press through and we get refined, and we have all these things that come out that we never knew were there and we didn't want to come out. But we're so much stronger on the other side. So I have had a lot of feelings like that, but thankfully Jesus has allowed there to be other people, especially like family and friends, to push me when I couldn't. So it's good.
Thanks. Payton, thanks for saving my questions in this podcast.
She has such great questions.
Thanks for being
we
here.
We love
of
Payton.
course.
Yeah, Payton's
You're
the
amazing.
best. Payton's the best. As we kind of wrap things up, thank you again for joining us, Payton.
Of course. Thanks for having me.
As always.
As always.
And is there anything that you're like, hey, I want to share, like I want to promote this, let people know, or we want to know like what's the best way to support you? Is it on, like, is it best to find you on social media? What are some of the things that maybe you want to promote, or how we can best find you?
You guys are awesome. Well, would just love to connect. So for everyone that's tuning in, that's going to be at this incredible summer event.
Let's go.
I cannot wait. We're going to have so much fun. But would love, like social media is such a great way to connect. And we have a couple of books coming out this year. The first one's going to be a kid's book, which is so fun.
Cool.
Love the kids. Tales of a Call. And we have activation kits, and the activation kits are meant to help people in their season of time live out what God's calling them to. So we'll have them at the event, and it's a free activation sheet online. So anyone that's listening right now, like just start challenging your heart to say yes today. And ultimately, would just love to be a part of this community and culture of dreaming God's dreams together.
That's good.
Love it. Cool. Well, everyone, thanks for watching to the end. If you have, please please subscribe. That would mean a lot and help get this podcast out to more people. But as always, we love you guys. Jesus loves you. Peace. We'll see you guys.